What's up, everybody? Well, we've gotten the bad movies out of the way for the year of 2019. Now to start talking about some of the better movies that I saw in the past year. This is the most surprising films of 2019. Not an automatic guarantee that any or all of these films are going to end up on my top 10 best of the year. This is simply the list of movies that either came out of absolutely nowhere and I had no expectations for them. They just kind of dropped in my lap and were very enjoyable. Or movies that I did not expect very much for and got much more out of them than I thought I was going to. So, starting right off at number 10, wasting no time, is Yesterday. This was a film that came out, I believe the director was Danny Boyle. If not, I'll get corrected down below. But he's basically taking a story where this guy ends up in a world or a reality where nobody knows of the Beatles. Nobody knows about the Beatles, nobody knows any of the Beatles music, and he starts taking Beatles music and becomes one of the biggest biggest musical acts ever from the Beatles music. And it was an interesting little concept to me because, you know, we're in this time now because of Bohemian Rhapsody where we're going to start to get a lot of biopics and we're going to start to see a lot more classic bands or recording artists to start to get movie focus. But this was something different. This wasn't a Beatles movie. This was a movie about art. This was a movie about, you know, the importance of art and, you know, who that art belongs to or who that art is important to and things of that nature. It asks a lot of interesting questions in the movie where, you know, on one side of things, he's plagiarizing music and presenting it as his own. And another side of things, he's bringing music that's beloved and that he knows everybody will love to a world that it does not exist in. So it was just a nice little enjoyable movie that kind of came out of nowhere for me. So I really liked Yesterday. That one is number 10. Number 9 is going to be Aladdin. Now this is a movie that was on my most anticipated of the year, and the closer it got to the release of the movie, the less that I started to expect from it because I didn't really hear a whole lot of praise. There wasn't a whole lot of excitement for it. The Will Smith genie and the trailers and everything started to look really off, especially the first couple times that we saw it. And I went and saw the movie and I really enjoyed it. Jafar sucked. That's the one thing about the movie that I thought really failed. But Will Smith, the main thing that I was worried about, I thought was the best part of the movie. As somebody who Aladdin is one of, if not my favorite of like the classic era Disney movies, I thought that the live action adaptation of this actually made sense to be a live action movie, which is another trend that we're in right now, is Disney redoing all of its films in live action. Aladdin made sense. A lot of the story and the characters and the excitement and the sequences I thought translated really well into live action, and I had a good time with the movie. So it was a nice little surprise that this didn't end up being on like the worst of the year for a lot of people. It was actually quite enjoyable. Number 8 is Fighting with My Family. Now I'm somebody that, aside from playing a couple of the SmackDown games on like PlayStation 2, I never really was into wrestling. Like, I knew who The Rock were, I knew who Stone Cold was. Those were kind of the big ones when I was a kid, that anybody who was my age that loved wrestling usually loved one or both of those guys. So I knew about wrestling, just never really got into it much. I never watched it. Even as an adult, I don't have any interest in it. So a movie focused on wrestling really has no appeal to me whatsoever. I saw that The Rock was in it and I'm like, okay, is this gonna be a goofy comedy where The Rock is just being The Rock, which The Rock is great as The Rock, but the trailers didn't do anything to sell me on it. I was like, okay, that's just not for me. And I started hearing a lot of people praise this movie, saying it's way better than you think it's gonna be. And I've watched it, and I actually rewatched it a couple nights ago just because I was in the mood to watch it. And it's a damn enjoyable movie. It's a really good sports film. It does a lot of things that you expect it to go in certain directions, to follow the certain tropes and the typical directions that sports movies like this and underdog stories like this take, and it kind of flips it on its head. It almost makes the main character the dick-headed bully of the sports trope, to where she kind of has to learn about herself and grow as a person in order to grow as this wrestler. I love the family dynamic where you have pretty damn close to the actual people too. That shows a little reel at the end what they actually look like and talk like, and they captured that pretty well. But the family dynamic of this family of wrestlers was really enjoyable. And even seeing like The Rock and real wrestlers kind of show up in this just kind of fleshed out the movie. It wasn't a distraction. It didn't become a WWE movie. I thought Vince Vaughn was great. These are the types of roles that he just does great with. So it's actually a really fun movie, and it's one that I could see myself rewatching quite a bit. And had I not seen a lot of people praise it, I probably would have never watched it. So number 8, Fighting with My Family. Number 7 is SpiderMan Far From Home. Now, I was not expecting this movie to be very good for a couple of reasons. One, it was post-Endgame, and I wasn't quite sure how a post-Endgame movie was going to work. Endgame was so huge that it was like, okay, I need time to decompress. I'm not exactly ready to revisit the MCU yet. But anyway, the bigger reason is because Spider-Man Homecoming, despite a lot of people, probably most of you watching this video, love that movie, I'm somebody that I just like it. There's a lot of issues that I have with it. To me, it doesn't really fit what I want from a Spider-Man movie. I am somebody that absolutely loves the Raimi films, so that's just my taste. But despite liking like Michael Keaton, and I love Tom Holland in the role and some of the things that they did in it, I saw this and I was like, are they gonna keep doing the same thing? The trailers looked like they were really doubling down on some of the high school humor and some of the friend characters that I didn't really care for so much. So I figured this was just gonna be Homecoming with more of the stuff that I didn't like. And I actually like this film a lot more than Homecoming. Jake Gyllenhaal is great as the villain. Spoiler alert, not that you should be surprised by that, but he's great in the role of Mysterio. I thought Tom Holland did really good. I actually liked some of the friend characters in this more than I did the last film. I liked his interaction with Nick Fury in this. I thought the action sequences and some of the like Mysterio sequences are some of the coolest scenes you're gonna see in any of the Spider-Man films. So I actually was genuinely surprised how much I liked Far From Home, and that probably made it into my top half or so of the MCU, if not damn close, where Homecoming for me is towards the bottom. So Far From Home, nice little surprise. Number 7. Number 6 is Peanut Butter Falcon. This is a movie that came out of absolutely nowhere and just dropped into my lap. I had no idea what the hell that was. I had not seen any trailers for it or heard any buzz about it or knew anything about this film. All of a sudden it was out there. There's this Shia LaBeouf movie. I had one or two people at work kind of mention it in passing, and I was bored one night, me and Holly sitting there, and I passed by it. I was like, hey, you want to watch this? You know, it was one of those moods where you're like, I don't care what I watch. Threw it on, so glad that we did, because it's one of the most genuinely enjoyable films I've seen all year. It's got a little bit of Mark Twain-esque to it. It's got a little coming-of-age-esque to it. There's some of it that's just genuine, like, characters bettering each other. It's what I call a sweater movie. You know, it just kind of has the experience of watching the film is like sitting down in a cold day in a sweater, sipping some hot cocoa by a fire. It just kind of makes you feel good inside. So it's one of those types of movies, and I had no idea when this thing was coming out. I had no clue what the hell it was about. It was a movie that I could have very easily passed over and never saw for the rest of my life, but chance be it, I saw it, and it was a genuine surprise. Number 5 is my favorite comedy of the year, and that is Longshot with Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron. Another movie that kind of just slipped in there right after Endgame. I think it was the week after Endgame came out, and even when I went and saw it, nobody was watching Longshot. Everybody was still trying to catch Endgame. So it kind of floated under the radar for a bit. And this is by far the funniest movie that I saw this past year. It might be the funniest movie I've seen the past 2 years. Not too many comedies nowadays tend to make me laugh. This one genuinely made me laugh. I thought it was very sweet. It's very much a romantic comedy, but it does very well at balancing the two. It's got a nice romance and one of those, like the title says, Longshot. Seth Rogen hooking up with Charlize Theron. You look at that and you're like, never in a million years. And the movie does a really good job at convincing you why these two people would love each other. And it has a good, like I said, balance of comedy to where there's some good, genuine comedy that women will appreciate, and there's some good, raunchy man humor in here. So it's got a nice balance. Some romantic comedies tend to lean a little bit too much into more female-based comedy that some men can't really get the enjoyment out of. Maybe I'm generalizing that, but that's my experience with a lot of romantic comedies. But this movie does a good job at balancing that. And for a movie that has a political background where you have the Secretary of State played by Charlize Theron doing this little campaign to eventually campaign to be president, it does a great job at not being like a liberal movie or a conservative movie or one or the other, or casting shade one way or the other, or throwing little in jokes. It does a good job of taking the time to actually say how important it is for both sides to talk to each other, and for both sides to acknowledge when one side might have a point about something, or when one side might be a little bit wrong about something. And that was surprising to me. In a time when Hollywood especially tends to be ultra liberal and tends to be very one-sided and tends to take every single opportunity they can to get their message out there and spit on the other message with movies, both in undertone and in overtone, it was surprising to me that a movie like this that kept that enjoyable pace going along took the time to say what is a very important message nowadays, that we need to just talk to each other. Number 4 is a movie that I missed in theaters, waited a very long time, and finally watched it at home because my buddy Brian Lomax was just over the moon about this movie and kept mentioning it, and that is Alita Battle Angel. And shame on me for not checking this out in theaters, because this is one of those movies that might unfortunately not get the sequel that it deserves because it didn't make as much money as they were hoping that it would. This is an awesome sci-fi action film. I saw the trailers and I was like, I don't know. I don't know if this is for me. It looks like some things we've seen before. It looks like it's really leaning into the facial recreation of this character, and who knows. You watch it, it's got a lot to offer. It's got a lot of great action, it's got a lot of great character moments, it's got a lot of really cool lore, and it does a lot in one movie and goes in a lot of different directions, yet still leaves so much to be desired for a second film that I genuinely hope that we get it, honestly. So if you have had any doubts whatsoever about this movie like I did, give it a shot, because I was genuinely surprised how awesome Alita Battle Angel was. Number 3 is a movie that definitely was not on my radar, and I saw it months after it hit Netflix, and it ended up being in my top 5 horror films of the year, and that is The Perfection. This is a movie that, to me, had a lot of genuine surprises along the way. It has multiple twists and turns throughout the movie, and every single one worked for me, which is rare. Usually a movie that tries to do multiple twists can nail one, possibly two, and then really stumble with the third or fourth twist. This movie, I thought, carried all of them very well. Very good performances, very interesting premise, and it's a movie that you genuinely don't know where it's going. That's one thing that I'll say about it that I loved, because a lot of times nowadays I can look at a movie and in 5 minutes I can tell where it's going. I can see some of the writing on the wall. I can predict a lot of things. The Perfection, if you don't watch any trailers, maybe even if you do watch trailers, I don't know, I didn't see the trailer, but if you walk in blind like I did, the first 20 minutes you're gonna think it's gonna go one direction, and then there's a huge twist, and then you're gonna assume it's gonna go another direction, and there's a huge twist, now it's going this way. Genuinely badass ride for a surprising horror film in The Perfection. And now we're at my top 2, and number 2 is a movie that, while I really tried to hold on to hope and to be very optimistic, the closer this movie got to release, the less that I had hope in it, and the more expectations that I had that I was gonna be disappointed or end up possibly even hating this movie. And though I am in the minority, I genuinely loved Terminator Dark Fate. This is a movie that took big risks, and for me personally, they paid off. I don't really feel like getting into the argument again down in the comment section, because I know everybody that hates it's gonna give me all the stupid bullshit reasons why this is the worst movie in the world, like they did all back in November when I dropped my reviews. If you wanna know my full thoughts, watch either of those reviews. I try to explain it as best I can. If you don't wanna hear it, then I don't wanna hear yours. So there you go. Save your time and save my time. Terminator Dark Fate, to me, great action film, great tone carryover from the first 2 Terminator films. This feels the most like a genuine sequel to the first 2 films. I thought that Arnold was utilized very well. I thought that Sarah Connor was awesome in this. I thought that the new characters, which I was most worried about, were awesome. And I even liked the villain, which was something I haven't liked since T2, which is a really cool way where they have both a T-1000 and a T-800 kind of at the same time. So this is a movie that genuinely surprised me how much I enjoyed it. And it kind of saddens me that more people didn't get the experience that I did, because I think that there's a lot of things in this movie that quite a few people are sleeping on. But nonetheless, I liked it. If you didn't, sorry. Number 2, Terminator Dark Fate. But number 1 was a movie that I definitely knew about and was certainly on my radar, but I just had no expectations for. I didn't really have a whole lot of interest in it. I didn't have a whole lot of hope for it, and I kind of forgot about it until it came around to the month release, and it ended up being my favorite horror film of the year, and that is Dr. Sleep, the sequel to The Shining. This was an awesome movie. Fantastic sequel to The Shining, and just a fantastic film overall. It's my favorite thing that Mike Flanagan has ever done. I'm a fan of his, but I'm not necessarily screaming his name from the rooftops like some people, who are just part of the reasons why I didn't have huge expectations for this. But this movie does a great job at being a sequel to The Shining without being The Shining 2, if that makes any sense. It's not another movie about the haunted hotel. It's not another movie about a haunting or about ghosts. It goes in a completely different direction while holding on to the themes and the storyline and some of the lore of The Shining. So it's definitely a continuation of that story, but it's a totally different movie, which is fantastic to see, because most sequels nowadays take the wash, rinse, repeat formula, and Dr. Sleep is anything but that. Great fan service, but great standalone story, a lot of great performances in it, it goes for the jugular, say that, a genuinely disturbing movie in spots, but just absolute blast of an experience that I had with it, and I can't wait to watch it again. Supposedly there's like a 3-hour director's cut coming. Let me get it. Number 1 is Dr. Sleep. So those are my top 10 most surprising movies of 2019, guys. What were some of your most surprising movie experiences? Let me know down in the comment section below, and we will talk about it. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button so you can keep your eyes peeled for my upcoming best films of 2019 and best films of the decade, which will be coming out here in a couple of days. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Please check the video description below for social media links like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and my Patreon page, which is a great way to give back to this channel and help this channel grow while getting cool exclusive content for your eyes only if you decide to become a patron. Also below all that's my Teespring store. It's got all my merchandise designs, so check all that out as well, guys. Very cool stuff created by my buddy Woody Bowen. And as always, if you want to check out some more of my videos, including the rest of my end of the year list that have already been released, you can check those out by clicking right over here.